Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transcendental Waves. I'm Jeff Bailey.
And I'm Michael Burrows. Today we're going to be talking about what could God be? God's a big word, and God is different to pretty much everybody. Maybe we've been grown up being influenced to what God is, but I think every person either has an idea of what God is or they have an idea that God does not exist. Or that it exists and they don't know what it is. What do you think God could be to different people, Jeff?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to start it. Is like so the how different people would frame it, whether there is a God, isn't a God, and people who would say there is a God has a pretty good definition of what they would say God is. Um, yeah, what is God and what could God be? There's a There's been thousands and thousands of examples throughout history of what God could be.
It seems like somebody's always trying to tell us what God is.
Exactly. I guess that's where I was going is there's been so many examples and yet throughout time it seems those gods or God have changed in order to like accommodate the current culture or the current culture created that God to fit their needs.
Do you think man is capable of finding God by himself without someone telling him what it is?
Well, personally, I think that's the only way a person can truly find what I call God is through sitting still by yourself and
When you came to that realization, what changed from the old way you looked at God, the way you were brought up in the culture you were from?
well, I guess and it's like Christianity teaches you to like I don't want to say fear God, but there's definitely a sense of like if I don't do what I'm told, I'm gonna get a spanking type mentality. Like I better do what's in this book or I'll be punished. So there is a sense of like a little bit of fear based training there. And
Many times.
so like I guess when you're doing the like sitting still and God is everything, I am God and God is the force that is just God God is light. Light is everything. Just vibrating at different speeds, experiencing itself differently. So like I when you come to that conclusion, a lot of the like fear based do this, do that, everybody needs to be, a certain way just seems ridiculous. Um, I mean, I don't know. So like the whole like what is God and what God could be are two very different conversations.
Do you think God can ever set us free if we put him in a box?
No, 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 no. That's the what God could be is like defining a thousand or however many hundreds of thousands of gods have been invented throughout time. Like that's a bunch of different boxes, and it worked well for certain groups of people. But and that's the thing is like I couldn't I couldn't tell you. Like when I say what God is, it's just my best interpretation. And the fact of the matter is that I think a lot of these religious books are just like a bunch of people's attempt to share an experience that they're very willing to admit if you read close enough is almost impossible to explain. Like most of these books say that looking upon God is incomprehensible or stuff to that magnitude, and it's it is. I mean, it's something that you can experience and you can know, but to tell someone else what God is seems very valuable to me. Like I would never try to tell you and like feel that the words I used ever did it justice.
You seem like the type of person that wouldn't believe that I was going to hell, whether I believe the same thing of you or something completely different.
I don't I don't really believe in hell. I don't know about you.
I
Uh,
also don't believe
yeah,
in hell.
yeah.
I do believe in an afterlife, though.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I just don't believe it's there. It's such as like heaven and hell would have it described. Like I don't think it
Do you
exists that way.
believe that uh, our soul, our spiritual body needs the senses that our physical body does have?
Mm-mm.
I don't either.
No.
So to think of heaven, of anything that would reference any of our senses that we currently use, really doesn't make any logical sense. Now, does it?
That's my opinion on the thing as well. Like it just seems that like yes, in the three-dimensional world, we need our senses in order to navigate this world in order to survive. And we can do a lot of cool stuff, and this world is amazing. And like we've talked about before, I believe we can create heaven on earth. But nirvana, like the extreme and like whatever enlightenment principles that other religions talk about, I do think there is a when you die, your your life force and your energy goes back into the ether, whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah, man, the afterlife, right?
yeah,
But it's like maybe it's not the afterlife. Maybe it's the current life too. What's going on right now, man? It's just we're in a different form, you know?
yeah, I do think that's it. I think that very many, there's varied levels of frequency and vibration and whatever you want to call it,
Dude,
4D, 5D, all those like
oh yeah, think of all the different waves and frequencies we don't know yet because we can't measure or haven't, created yet.
yeah, quantum physics is like that's another thing in our lifetime that's gonna just keep getting cooler and cooler and cooler. They're discovering smaller and smaller particles of energy, and it's just, I mean, it's really like crazy to think that there is no such thing as like empty space really. Like we're swimming in this soup, and we just divide ourselves based on how fast things are vibrating, and it's
Dude,
a pretty neat principle.
have you ever seen like time crystals? Have you heard of that yet?
No.
So they're making crystals out of time now, like quantum computers are, and that's what made me think of that. Is when you said quantum physics. If you the quantum computers now that some of these universities are using are just doing things that we haven't even thought possible, pretty much. And I just love it. I love technology. I love science. I love the future.
Yeah,
So much potential there.
I think that when we talk about what God could be, science is going to be a big part of that. I think that some of the major religions of the world have really slowed down the progress of what like what our capabilities could be, as far as like I mean mental capacity, or I mean science in general. I think basically just came to a halt for about 1,000 years in the Dark Ages due to a very popular religion taking over a vast majority of the world at that point. So, I mean, I just think that like we're starting to see the next age of enlightenment when we talk about what God could be, like quantum physics and stuff. I mean, talking about like quantum entanglement, where it basically like due to the Big Bang, any matter that's ever touched another piece of matter is always like quantumly entangled and can affect each other no matter where they are in like in the universe. And that's a, I mean, some of these things that we're finding in science are like spiritual ideas that like Eastern religions, Indian religions, like ancient Arabic religions spoke about some of these like patterns and principles without knowing the math and science behind them a long time ago, and now we're starting to put numbers and like graphs to these things, and it's pretty cool. And that watching Matt like God and science become one thing instead of we were taught as kids they were two separate things.
It's almost like today's quantum physics is the modern day Pythagoras, his
Yeah,
school of, geometry and putting numbers to the universe and stuff.
yeah, dude. I think that's like another reason. Yeah, Pythagoras had that whole like cult following. It's when you start speaking the language of God and it's all just like frequency, math, science, like, and it's just like you start seeing the universe for this like as this big working machine, and you're putting the pieces to it. It's
All
you can
right,
see the magic.
but now that you have learned that God is that and not a man who died for you, do you miss that? Did it break your heart? Was there a grieving period? How was that transition of thought, of belief?
There is definitely a grieving period. I wouldn't say that I miss having a divine overlord looking down over me, making sure I don't do anything bad.
By divine overlord, do you mean religious tyrant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just making sure.
So like, I mean, that's not missed. There is a grieving period. It's mostly just feeling like just like you've been lied to, and you're wondering how many people know this. To be honest, but then you start to talk to people, and you realize most people don't know it and don't want to know it, and are really mad that you do know it. So like, you don't talk about it very much. But it, there's definitely a grieving period. But I mean, after that, like, it's a lot more. I mean, like, just like self responsibility. Like there's a lot more relief to it, and just accountability. So when shit's going wrong, it's not there's no one else to blame other than yourself.
Would you say you feel more powerful now?
Yeah, 100%. When you're in your power, you got to be in your power. And I mean, I think it sucks, man, because I think that like you see people that have really positive attitudes that are going to these churches, and they're obviously brainwashed, and you're like, but the ones that are trying to do good and be nice to people, it's just like you don't want to just like be mean and burst their bubble.
Man, I was at the bookstore a few months ago and I was looking at a book and it was about quantum physics or something. And this old man was like, "Hey, you know much about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know a little bit." And he goes, "Well, do you know anything about the Bible?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I know just as much or more about the Bible." And he said, "You know, I've been going to Sunday school my whole life, but they don't tell us what to do after we get old, you know?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I guess go fill a pew, give them some money, do the best you can, man. I don't know. Have a good life."
Hmm.
It's like you've. It's almost like I think when people get close to dying, they're like, "Do you think it was all worth it?" Do you know how many times I've had Christians be like, "Well, I'd rather bet that it is true," and it's like, wow, but do you know that it could be even more true than it is? It could be even bigger than it is. It could be even more powerful than it is. You could have more freedom. You could have more spirituality. You could have more union with God. And I mean, it's a very Jewish aspect, or I mean, there's lots of other ones too. But just from what we know of our culture wise, it's a oneness with God, and it's not a this is God. No, there's no idol. It's almost like the whole Bible teaches about don't have an idol, but we have created Jesus, and Jesus is an idol. One of the coolest things I did was I bought this book that had like chapters of all these different spiritual books in it. And as I read these, I saw how all the religions of the world, all the current religions. This wasn't one of those books I was studying ancient religions. This is all the current religion. They all talk about oneness. They all talk about loving thyself and thy neighbor. A- And it's like they're not all about saying this my way or is the only way. But there are some that are like that, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, man. And you were talking about earlier about people getting old and wondering, is it all worth it? Like I think that you know you'll see people of all religions that get to the end and really like start to question themselves whether they lived a good life or not. And a lot of times, man, like it, I think that no matter what their religion is, if they feel like they were a good human and lived a life of love, then that passing into the afterlife feels very easy. And if not, then it might be a scary thing. Uh, but
Yeah, I've noticed that too, man. The people that think they've lived a good life, they pass on a lot more pleasantly than those who have regrets full of their lives.
yeah, man, and I just think that there are certain belief systems out there that set you up for guilt, and just it's really hard to be good enough.
Oh, speaking of guilt, dude, this hit me, so bad. At my grandmother's funeral, my grandmother was my best friend, and I did her eulogy and everything. And the preacher said after everyone was talking, that if you want to make Betty proud, if you want to see Betty again, you must be baptized in the name of Jesus. And I mean, I was like, my grandma didn't even ask for that. He just came out and said, "Did you know that's making all her family guilty right there?" And he's like, "If nothing would make Betty happier than to see you be baptized if you haven't." And I'm like, "No, man, I promise my grandmother would be much happier of other cool stuff going on in your life than if you went and got baptized." And it is
But it's just like when you're in the church, that church just using that minute to just like pop its little marketing gig in there,
it
and it's
that's
just like,
exactly what they
but it's
used it
built-in
for.
guilt. Like he's thinking, I'm saving their salvation, I'm gonna save the family, like. And some people, I think, truly believe that, man. I really do. Like they think that like that when we die, we use our bodies in a different world. Like I think there are people that believe in zombie Jesus, and that like we get to like resurrect, and we will have like one day that all the people that believed in God will just be brought back to live on earth and have it be heaven. And I don't
Right. I mean,
understand that.
oh yeah, and like they won't get cremated because then they won't have their bones, so they won't be able to come back in zombie land. I mean, there is so many stories
Yeah.
and ideas and opinions. Um, uh, which one's right? Well, some of us know which one's right. Ain't none of those ones right.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing when you start telling people it's like, well, I don't believe in God anymore. It's like I know God, and then they're like, well, what's that mean? It's like, well, it's really hard to tell you because the words don't exist in any human language to tell you what God is. That's why there's war across the world, because we can't communicate what God is. And for the longest time, instead of trying to just come together and figure it out, we decided to kill each other for it. And now we've just gotten more and more complicated weapons instead of better and better diplomatic methods.
Yep. I wish we had a church around here, Jeff, where people could just come and love on each other and not, it didn't matter what religion you were because this church didn't have a particular religion. Maybe it was just more of a fellowship circle or something.
Dude, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm hoping to just like organically start to create or see happen around me just by doing stuff like this, is just create a place where, yeah, God is actually all inclusive. It really does just stand for love. figure out where to go from there. Like I don't think that like I think that when you start looking at all these like different religious texts as like facets of a diamond, and like all different like every like diamond has thousands of different inclusions to shine this bright sparkly light, and like all of these religious texts do have divine truths hidden in them, but if you can't look past the cultural biases and the historical time that they're written in to see that it's something that was created by man, and all these different religions tell like say like, oh well, you can deny the other ones because they were created by man, but this one's the word of God and it was created by God, and it's like no, everything here was created by God, yes, but some man wrote those books, and some man wrote every book that's ever been written on this planet. So like to say that it wasn't written through the prism of his culture is ridiculous. And the whole like that's what I'm saying. If you start seeing divine past those and find the divine truths, then like all of us can come together with way more commonality than
So,
divisiveness.
if we had a church, or if there was a church around here in these parts that taught about divine truths, do you think that'd be considered a pagan church?
I don't know. It wouldn't be taken very kindly at first. I mean, we saw how the Muslim temples have been reacted to around here.
Right. I mean, they tried to burn that thing down a few times and the equipment and stuff. Right. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I bet they thought that they were in America and they had freedom of religion.
I bet you they did. I bet you they did think they were in America and had freedom of religion. That is a crazy thing. Freedom of religion if you have the same one as we do. And that's I mean, I wouldn't say that our founding fathers came over here specifically for freedom of religion. I think it was more of freedom of money type thing. Still, like were, yeah, they wanted to be able to live by their own principles, but
But they weren't poor. They
no,
were rich people who
yeah,
wanted to go make more money and live by their own principles.
who wanted to
And
start a
who doesn't?
country. Yeah,
What rich person doesn't want to go live on an island?
start a new corporation on a
Right.
giant piece of land.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, all the cool rich people do that.
yeah. So
And
like,
it didn't start like in the 2000s.
no, like, yeah. So it was it was cool. I don't think that you know it was necessarily the most honest of beginnings. we
Yeah, like they weren't being persecuted over there. They didn't, it's like they just left to like, oh my gosh, oh, we're dying over here. We're being oppressed. Let's go to this new land where we can, the promised land.
no, it was not the promised land. It has been since then though.
I mean, it was kaching. It was the promised land. Sorry, Native Americans.
Oh man, we're probably gonna get kicked off of YouTube for that.
And that's like one thing. Like we would love to have a guest, a Native American guest, about what God is to you. That'd be cool to have.
I would man,
That,
any really like I would love to talk to any person who's open minded enough from any religion to talk about God. If you're like an ex preacher or like somebody that actually has a reason to talk about what is God to them and what God was. I mean, it's a different story for sure. Outside of the normal like Christian dialogue, would be pretty cool. I've you know, been to a couple other temples and seen a couple other church services that aren't Christian, and it's pretty eye opening, but also still almost the same.
yep. Yeah. I, Jeff, hand me that book over there. Not no no the other little one underneath that one. Yeah. Nope. That one. Yeah. This book right here, The Gnostic Gospels by Elaine Pagels. This book really started opening my eyes of where Christianity came from. And it was so informative. And then every little thing, it took me so long to read it, and it's such an easy read, but every little thing I found in there, then I went and researched this whole thing. And that took so long to do, and it was the time of my life. And I did it during COVID, and it was just like, wow. I mean, there's so many more sources, but this is just one. I just happened to get this. It was recommended to me by the book, the online bookstore. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool.
Dude, Gnosticism is a very cool principle. I like the whole I mean, there's a lot of theories. I guess the stone ape theory is one of them, where it's just like a lot of these like spiritual experiences, like shamanic, have a lot of shamanic roots to them, and different plant medicines or sacrament slash concoctions that are that give you some sort of experience with the divine. And
Dude, even the Hebrews, they went, the Kabbalah, they had a whole mystical sect of Judaism.
yeah, man,
Most people don't even know that.
no, the mystical Jews are pretty cool to look into. Like, I mean, that's the root for Jesus' story. I mean, to be honest, that side of the Jews was where Jesus came from. The mystical, like, I mean,
Yeah, then they killed him, and then his whole clan too. His whole village of his whole denomination. It's like there were different denominations of Jews, just like there were in our of Christians.
yeah, that one is not allowed to be a thing.
They did not want that one. Right. It's almost like I don't think they probably don't want mystical Jews now either.
No, I think mysticism is something that they don't want any part of. I think mysticism is part of that, of like unlocking the power of God within you, like realizing that, like,
That sounds like something my friend Jesus said when he said the kingdom of God is within you.
yeah, there's like, we're walking around in soup where there is no empty space. There's nothing but energy everywhere, and when you can see it and tap into it,
If the
it's a real thing.
if heaven is in us, then are we just going inside of us when we die? Is that where heaven is? Or is that heaven up in the cloud? The heavens. Is that what they meant by that?
I think heaven is ours to be created. Like, heaven is, like we've talked about before, heaven is an opportunity we're given to create here and now.
What if our souls were in the afterworld, afterlife, or the other dimension, or the spiritual realm, or whatever, and we were given an opportunity to go into this reality that was called heaven, where we could create anything we wanted and enjoy all of these magical senses, and that was our time and our reward for doing whatever service in the spiritual
For
realm.
being the energy that lights light bulbs
Yeah,
and
I
raises mountains
dude,
and
what if
creates
what if
suns.
that happened? Like, wouldn't that
Like,
be a
what
cool
if we got
thought?
a chance to be a human for a little while and create? Yeah, yeah.
Or a little god, maybe we're all just running around and being little gods, creating whatever we want. I think that'd be a cool way to look at it. And then when we're done, get done with our heaven, then we go back and do some whatever we're doing. Because if our souls, if we have a soul and it's eternal, has no beginning and no end. So it's to think,
It was here before us.
right, what was
It'll
our
be
soul
here
doing
after us.
before it got into this body?
Right. That is the whole, like. Okay, so I guess this is gonna make me say more of what I believe, but it's kind of the whole like reincarnation thing. I don't think that like our soul slash energy, our light, ever dies. It's ever been dead or ever will die. Like, we we are eternal. That's what Jesus was trying to teach us. And like, when we die, like, we're born immediately into something else, and it could be lifetimes later. But like,
Because time isn't really
time doesn't exist. We
what
go
time
where we want to.
is.
Like, our energy can go anywhere in space and time, and we can choose to experience something else if we would like. And the whole heaven and hell type thing is when, if you're living a life that's blind and you don't live in your truth and you're
You don't live in the light.
lower and lower vibration, then you might not get to choose your next spot when you die. You
Yeah.
get to reborn and you're learning new lessons.
Right. Or maybe you instead of heaven you get hell. That's your hell, you get to live hell right now. What does that mean? I don't know. Maybe it's, trauma. Maybe it's suffering, regrets, depression, unworthiness, guilt, giving your power to some other person or idol. It could be lots of things, not no self care.
Yeah, man. I think that, yeah. I think in I think it's Hindus that believe in these like cycles, and basically as you like raise your vibrational plane, you go to like heavenly realms, but no matter what, you're constantly like, you're just like a wavelength of sound or any light. You go up and down, and we go through it, and we will live incarnations of many different kinds. The life force of God, it could be a rock, and like something has to keep the rock alive, and it's just like we all go through this energy is constantly cycling through. And if our souls are in the life force that keeps us alive, I would have to believe that like we all take our turn to do that. And to be, a light photon or a fly or some other form of matter that I can't even imagine right now. Like we're all something. The life force that is God is inside everything that we can perceive as humans, and there's no such thing as empty space, so it's inside that as well. That is everything is God.
And really, deep down, nothing's really as solid either. It's just
No,
light.
there is no separation. We're all just different speeds of light, and it's there's like these principles like.
It's almost like we're light beings.
Mhm.
I wonder if any religions ever referred to humans as light beings. It seems like I've heard that before.
Yeah, man, that's another Eastern thing.
Well, now we just got to go find out about alchemy and magic for another day.
Can't wait to learn more about some alchemy.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Transcendental Waves. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for showing us the love, and we love you guys too.
Like, comment, subscribe. Can't wait to talk to you again next time. Peace, guys.